Okay, hello everybody, and welcome to the Independent Activist. I'm joined here today by Brogan Devlin. Now, Brogan is the sister of Jordan Devlin. Jordan is currently incarcerated in Wandsworth prison. He's seen to be one of the Filton 18. And what we're going to do is we're going to chat to Brogan. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm just going to ask Brogan, did she ever think growing up that her older brother would end up in prison? So, in order to kind of set the background here, we're just maybe going to ask Brogan if you could give us an idea of what life was like growing up. You grew up, I believe, in Ballymena in the north of Ireland before both you and Jordan went to England to study at university. So, what was life like growing up in Ballymena, and how did it shape your lives? And maybe did it have any bearing on why you went to England?
Yes, very much influenced why I went to England. Growing up in Ballymena, it's quite a small-minded mentality. I grew up very segregated, very aware that I was Catholic and that the other people that lived on the other side of the town went to the other school were Protestant, and that we were like a minority in our town. I'd say our town is majority Protestant, so there was a lot of issues around that in Ballymena. And yeah, growing up just hyper aware that like we lived somewhere that is occupied itself, and that's caused so much tension within Ballymena. Um, and yeah, it's definitely shaped who I am and who Jordan is, and it's definitely influenced my decision to move away. Um,
Okay, well, it sounds like you have a very similar upbringing to me. Anyone who lives in the north of Ireland knows about colonisation. It knows about our history under 800 years of military British occupation. It's funny, I didn't see the conversation go in this direction, but it's perfect because all the analogies of like Ireland under colonial occupation, Ireland under military occupation, people suffering segregation, a form of apartheid in the north of Ireland, where not everyone had to vote, not everyone had access to full employment, not everyone had access to social housing. A lot of these things were kind of done through gerrymandering, which is a form of apartheid in itself, putting the power into the hands of a small cabal of people who don't have the interests of everybody in society at heart. So that's very, very, very interesting because a lot of people here in Ireland see the parallels between our history and that of Palestine, potentially seen as a colonial white European settlement within the Levant, within West Asia. So you would have seen growing up what segregation was like because you're talking about different schools, you're talking about living on different sides of the community. It very much mirrors the settlements and everything that's happening in the West Bank and in occupied Palestine today. So you feel that these formative years in the north of Ireland have left that indelible touch where you and Jordan both see parallels with other people who are perceived to live under oppression, segregation, apartheid. You think that's part of your core DNA and part of who and what Jordan actually is as an activist?
Absolutely, like we've seen it. It's something you would see often. I remember growing up, a boy in my town was murdered for wearing a Rangers top to the cinema. I remember like being spat on and being called like a dirty fiend, like you were always, you know, looked down upon and stuff like that. So there's so many parallels, and I think that really shapes the empathy that Irish people have for Palestine and the understanding that we have. Um, Absolutely, there's many parallels, and there's even today with the terrorism charges, the terrorism labels that they're throwing at anyone who is pro-Palestine, anyone that speaks out about what's happening in Palestine. That goes back to our history, the 70s and 80s, when they called Irish people terrorists and they labeled us a suspect community. And it's the same thing, history repeating itself again that we're seeing today. Which, yeah, it's crazy to see a Labour government doing this, to be honest, because it's literally the same as what Thatcher was doing then.
Yeah, it's amazing. The parallels are not just between Ireland and Palestine, between Irish nationalists and Palestinian revolutionaries, if I could use that phrase. But the Muslim community. You live in the United Kingdom. I'm maybe guessing you might have moved away from Ballymena to get away from segregation and to get away from sectarianism, to get away from what you would perceive as like an unequal, unfair society. And yet you've maybe seen exactly the same thing in the UK. I mean, the Muslim community with these prevent laws, where if a child comes into school and says something that could be construed as support for terrorism, like the teacher almost has to phone the police or contact the social workers, and there's a whole kind of hidden state oppression upon people who are not seen to be a part of the state. If you give someone a place in society, they have something to work towards, something to live for. They feel part of a community. They feel part of a nation. But whenever you try to separate people from the host body and create almost like separate communities that are then maybe disadvantaged, and then people are discriminated against, and then they're used as the scapegoats, as we see with the right wing and stuff going forward. But to get back to Jordan then, so would he have been uh, would he have been interested in world politics before he left the north, or was it just really when things came to a head with Palestine from October 23, or would he have been involved kind of in humanitarian causes and helping other people, trying to end inequality? I mean, where would you put him? I don't mean in a political spectrum. I mean, how would you describe your brother as a human being and how he interacts with the world, and what changes do you think he'd like to see?
I mean, it's just absolutely a part of his personality. He's just so kind-hearted. So seeing a genocide being live streamed to him, he just couldn't he could not live with himself and not do anything about it. The same with like the climate crisis. Like he just seen what was happening to the world, and he's just a very empathetic, caring person, and he cares about nature and he cares about other people, and he's just always to him it was so black, like the different, the wrong and right in this was so black and white to him, like, and it's so obviously, who's on the wrong side of history and who's on the right. And yeah, he chose to be on the right side of history, and he always has. He's always just deeply cared about causes, about humanitarian causes, um, and it's just very much part of his DNA. Yeah,
No, it sounds very much like he has what I would call a moral compass. Someone
exactly.
who knows the difference between right and wrong, and someone who's not prepared to stand idly by. He wants to be a voice for the voiceless. He wants to speak up for people who don't have that voice, who are being oppressed, who are being marginalised. If you don't mind me asking, it's kind of a question that I'd be interested in. You know, if things hadn't happened in Palestine, Israel, in October 2023, uh, where do you think Jordan would be right now? What do you think he would be doing? Would he be doing humanitarian work? Would he be a free spirit following his own life, trying to make his life as joyful and comfortable for himself, but also for other people? It sounds like he cares about other people. It sounds like if it wasn't Palestine, he's a type of person who feels he needs just to step forward when people need to step forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Like he got involved in many different causes. He volunteered for Mind Charity for a really long time. He has deep caring for mental health, and he cares about the climate a lot too. So he was a lot involved a lot in protests to do with that too. He helped the student encampment build the encampment. And he's just always like ready to help whatever cause needs a hand, to be honest. So I think he'd definitely be involved in helping someone somewhere, to be honest, whatever the cause is.
I think that's fantastic because it's important that people realize it's not just about Palestine. It's about every other injustice in the world, be it, you know, kind of sanctions against Cuba or Venezuela. I'm not trying to get political. I'm just trying to say that, some people, front and foremost, it's about Palestine and Palestine only. But I think people who genuinely, like Jordan, who have compassion and empathy for other people who don't have to live in their family, don't have to live in their immediate circle of friends, don't even have to live in their immediate community. I mean, injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere. Whoever said that? And it sounds very much as if he's the type of guy who, you know, under different circumstances, could be getting like an MBE for work that he's done over 10 years or whatever. In other circumstances, he could be leading a charity, it could be a CEO, it could be a fundraiser, it could be somebody working for like Amnesty International, it could be working for the UN. It sounds like he has all those intrinsic internal characteristics that are needed for someone to step forward, to put their head above the parapet, to take on what they need to take on in order to make that change in the world that they want to see. A change that, I may add, people like Jordan have been trying to do peacefully and through protests and through marches and through agitation. People have been talking about, pro-Palestinian activists as being the modern day suffragettes. I mean,
Mhm.
they threw themselves out in front of the King's Horse at Aintree or whatever back in the day, and like they would have been branded terrorists for their civil disobedience and their civil
Ridiculous
actions.
thing. The Yvette Cooper being in Parliament wearing the suffragette sash and celebrating the suffragettes, and then she's literally gone and labelled Palestine Action and tried to prescribe them. Well, has prescribed them for direct action, which is exactly what the suffragettes did. So, like in 10 years' time, I would absolutely not be surprised if the Filling It team weren't up for a Peace Prize. It's just right now who's filling the politicians' pockets. That's the only difference really for them. But honestly, I think in 10 years' time, the government will look at this as an absolute shambles, and so they should be absolutely ashamed of the decisions that they're making, and it's all to do with political interference. It's really shameful behavior from them, and like what is like Nelson Mandela was also called a terrorist, and now he's looked at as a hero, as he should be. But yeah, the current climate around this is just shocking.
Yes, one man's freedom activist is another man's terrorist. It's a very well known phrase, and it's very apt for the circumstances that we're living through, especially for Jordan and his comrades that are locked up in prison. Uh, you were saying there about like Yvette Cooper and stuff. I think there is much more going on in the background than we're ever going to be allowed to see. I think the political pressures coming from the government onto the Crown or the Public Prosecution Service and the police, and I think that there are exterior forces to the UK that are having a huge impact on this repressive legislation. But can you tell us how long now Jordan's been incarcerated? There's the kind of, what would you call it, the conditions he's forced to endure. I personally can't see any reason why they're not all out on bail. I mean, you take people's passports, they can't leave the country. You put them on a 24-hour curfew or 18-hour curfew or a 10-hour curfew at home at night. This seems purely punitive. Seems to be sending out a message to anyone else who might consider doing some form of similar direct action. So, how is he coping? How often do you get to see him or speak to him? What are the conditions like? How does he feel he's maybe being treated by the prison staff? But more importantly, what's his interactions with the other kind of people that are incarcerated in the jail?
So he's been in prison without trial on remand for almost a year now, coming up to August. And yeah, the conditions are shocking. So when they were first arrested as well, because of the Terrorism Act, there's so many loopholes that the government can treat them like absolute shit. They aren't treated like regular prisoners through this. So they were held for 2 weeks incommunicado. We didn't know where he was. They still haven't my dad's his next of kin. The police still haven't contacted us to say Jordan's been arrested. We had to find that out through other means. And basically, it's like kidnapped. They've literally just gone missing. Like no one told us, and then they couldn't call anyone. They were constantly questioned day and night by the terrorism police. And then some of them were actually, it was like psychological torture. They wouldn't let them turn the lights off at night. They literally were putting them in disgusting cells with human feces on the wall, making them clean up other people's feces off the wall. There was rat feces as well. the water in the showers was like up to their legs. Like it's just disgusting. But also mentally, they're locked up 23, sometimes 23 and a half hours a day, which for over a year, like almost a year now, they that's been what it has been, 23 hours a day. And so you can imagine what that even does to a person. It's just absolutely awful to think of. And he absolutely should be on bail. They meet all the conditions for bail. He has no priors. He's had absolutely model citizen behavior in prison. Like there is no reason that he shouldn't be on bail. It's absolutely ridiculous. And yeah, they're just treating them pretty terribly in there. Like they've tried to restrict contact with the public. So, for instance, they banned me from speaking to my brother for 3 months with no reason given. That was way at the start as well. And basically, they told him that they called me and I'm his sister, and they said that I said I didn't know who he was. Like they play like mind games with them all the time. Um, One of the Muslim prisoners at the start. So there was just one Muslim prisoner at the start, and she was specifically singled out. She was constantly drug tested and pregnancy tested, just as a means to humiliate her. They're just playing a pretty evil game in there, and as well as sometimes we can't even tell if it's them being evil on purpose or they're just so bad at their job, and such the system is so broken because basically cells that were designed for two people or for one person are now holding two people. Jordan can't even go to his own court appearances because if he leaves his cell, someone will be in his cell by the time he comes back from court, which means he has to move prison, which basically starts him at the start again. And when that happens, so when they first moved him prison, he was at Wormwood Scrubs originally. He had a job, and he could contact us, and like things were sort of like becoming a bit okay to deal with. Then when they moved him because he went to court, he couldn't call anyone for 6 weeks. He was like again completely like just isolated. He still hasn't been able to get a job again. Just because they say that he poses a risk. They wouldn't even let them join debate club because they say it's too risky. Um, all of this is political. All of this is just like a way to break their spirit, a way to make sure that they can't speak to people on the outside, that we can't reassure them. It's just, yeah, it's really sad.
Yeah, it sounds like they're trying to break them down psychologically through isolation and marginalisation. We all need, we know, I mean, we've heard that people who have been held in, like Julian Assange and Leonard Peltier in America, a lot of these guys held in solitary confinement. So if you're locked up for 23 hours a day, that's solitary confinement by any kind of stretch of the imagination. It does have a huge psychological effect. It's meant, we're designed to be sociable beings. We're designed to go to work, talk to other people, have neighbours, chat to family, bring up children. So we're social beings. We're not meant to be isolated. And it's through the isolation that they could try and break down someone's resolve, break down their resilience to be able to bounce back from setbacks in life. So it sounds like a calculated attempt to make their lives like a living hell and a misery within the prison. So by extension, how has it affected you and your dad and maybe any other members of the family? Then you're going through this with him. I know he's the one suffering the incarceration, but you've had the weeks of not knowing is he okay. Maybe he's been ghosted sometimes when they move people from prison to prison and there's no contact, as you may be saying, for 6 weeks. You don't know where he is. You don't know what's happening. No one's going to update you. So what's that like as a sister to have someone who has so much love for humanity that they found themselves in prison trying to defend defenseless people? How's that struggle been for you and your family?
Yeah, it's been heartbreaking to be honest. Like seeing someone that you love like go through this, and you know that they've done the right thing, and just the obviously the unjustness of it all is infuriating. But just the day to day like is so scary. Like I might not hear from him for days, and no one's heard from him for days. because they won't let him make a phone call or this and that. Like, and it's just like, how do I know if he's actually okay? Like, how would I ever know if something's happening? So you're always on edge. Like, you're constantly worried because it's also like it's the highest security prison again
Mm.
because of everything comes back to the terrorism link, and they've done this obviously on purpose. Um, but yeah, being a high security prison, he's in there with really like awful criminals, to be honest. And like the other day, this again goes back to his caring nature. He witnessed someone beating up someone who was an amputee, and they actually took the amputee like his prosthetic leg and started beating him with it, started beating him with his crutches. And so Jordan interfered and tried to break up this fight, tried to like protect the person who was vulnerable. And this person then that was doing the beating turns out to be a gang member. Like he's now at risk of this when he shouldn't even be in this situation in the first place. Like it's it's every day I'm stressed, I'm worried about his safety. Um, and like between both the guards and the other prisoners, like it's just a scary environment for anyone to be in. And then just the constant isolation. He has ADHD, so he's someone who's so used to doing things all the time and um, constantly doing things with his hands. Like he's a sculptor and he's a musician, so he's constantly making music, and he hasn't had all those things for coming up to a year now. So I can only imagine what it's doing to his mental health. And again, like even the fact that he can't get a job because they won't let him, like it's absolutely heartbreaking to think what's like going on inside his head. Um, yeah, it's been a struggle. It's been really hard on myself and my dad, um, and like just we don't live in London either. Like my dad has to get a flight anytime to see him, so it's tough to do that as well. But obviously we try and see him as much as possible. And when we do, like it's a really beautiful thing to just see him and like be able to hug him. But yeah, it's not been easy.
Yeah, it does sound, if you don't mind me saying, it sounds soul destroying. Someone who is so creative, someone who's creative through music and creative through their hands, they're actually being creative through their emotions and like spiritually and mentally. And to take that away from them is almost like taking a guide dog away from a blind person. I mean, it's something that's an integral part of their life and their being and a necessity. And it sounds like even though they haven't been convicted of a crime, they're
No,
being punished. They're being punished as if they had been convicted of a crime. And so, what about your dad then? I mean, I'm assuming he's in his 50s or maybe slightly older. I mean, it must put a lot
it's
of
six.
pressure on him, the travel, the worry, the expense, the fear of what's coming down the line. It must be very, very, very difficult.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, my dad's in his 60s, and between me and him, we like Jordan lost his house in all of this, and we had to move all of his musical equipment, everything down 3 flights of stairs. Then that's just like one example of the effects that these sort of things have. Like he lived in that house for 10 years, Jordan did, and he absolutely shaped it to be everything that he wanted. He's a carpenter, so he built everything in his room. It's all very him, and yeah, it's just like everything sort of crumbling apart. And my dad has been. I'm really proud, actually, like of how he's just sort of took everything and ran with it, and he's really trying his best, and he's learning and reading so much more about Palestine every day, and he's getting involved now in like protests and speaking out, and like he always comes to any of the protests outside of the court and obviously the court appearances. And he's been writing poetry. I'm like, who is this? Like, it's actually the creativity out of this whole group of people, all the poems and like the obviously there's an oddly beautiful thing about all these people being brought together, all these 18 strangers, and now we're all this extended family that's brought together. And yeah, just seeing my dad write poetry about Palestine and the parallels of growing up in Ireland and stuff, like he's really taken it in his stride, and he's doing amazing as a person. But I know obviously it has a heavy weight on him, financially, especially. Like, obviously, all of these things like you don't even take into account, which yeah, it's been a struggle for him as well. But I am very proud of how he's handled it.
I haven't had the pleasure of meeting your dad, but I'm going to say your dad's just being a dad. He's doing what he
Yes.
has to do. He's meant to be there. He's meant to be the rock. He's meant to be the person everyone can rely on. But I'll guarantee you, no matter how strong he might appear in front of you and Jordan, I'm sure inside that man is like he's going through some kind of turmoil. So you've talked about the extended support that the family network has around, we'll call them the detainees. I know some people call them political prisoners, but we'll call them like detainees. Uh, what has been the personal support that you and Jordan and your dad have got from your community, your friends, and your family? Anyone turned their back, or has everyone come closer?
No, everyone's came closer. Like that is just something so beautiful that I've never had to. Obviously, this is an unfortunate time and it's an unfortunate experience, but everyone's really came together to support us. It's been very yeah, very much appreciated. And like at the start, so originally it was six of them that were arrested together on site, and six then extended family members. We were the sort of first that this had happened to. We all were scrambling together, like couldn't believe our ears, couldn't believe what was happening. Um, and so we just got like a group chat together, and we've been supporting each other ever since. And then as the years went on, so people had the six became 18 eventually, and those other people had, is it the other 12? Yeah, the other 12. They had their homes violently raided. Like they had the trauma of that. So they had, like whole SWAT teams come in and absolutely tear the house apart in the middle of the night at 4 to 6 a.m., something like that. They came in and absolutely destroyed their homes. They have the trauma of that on top of everything. Um, and yeah, everyone has just really came together um, and supported each other and cried together. And yeah, for the first time, like I said, I don't live in London, so a lot of them that are based in London, they see each other a bit more often at like solidarity events and stuff. But yeah, at court, the recent core appearance, I got to meet everyone, and it was just so nice to hug them, because you can speak about this to all of your friends, and all of my friends have been amazing, but you don't really understand it until you've been through it. So we all really have this bond that we don't have with anyone else. So it's great to be able to talk to them, and obviously we're just trying anything we can to get our family out of there. We're just like sharing ideas with each other, and constantly bouncing things off each other, and just there to vent as well whenever more shit hits the fan, because every day there's just new stuff happening, um, new injustices happening. So yeah, it's nice to have people that really get it.
Yeah, I kind of think you'll have those connections for life. That's what happens. People come together, shared experience, shared trauma, shared kind of shattered dreams, and shared hopes for the future potentially. And people kind of, keep in contact really for the rest of their lives. So you mentioned Jordan's been incarcerated now for over a year. It just struck me somebody sentenced here, actually convicted and sentenced here in the north of Ireland, who got 2 years in prison to be out by now.
Yeah.
50% remission for good behaviour, they'd be walking the streets. Your brother hasn't even been convicted of anything, and he's already served what you could perceive as a 2 year prison sentence because, for good behaviour, you get out after 12 months. In fact, they're emptying some of the British prisons from some of their longer term prisoners because there's enough space for the
Yeah.
people that they're charging, bringing before the courts and incarcerating. So where is the trial process now? Is there an actual date? And I think an important question from my perspective is it going to be a jury or is it going to be a closed court case? Do you know?
So the trial starts in November.
Wow.
Yeah, so they were arrested. I actually remember they were arrested in August, and in October we were like being told when the trial was, and someone said November,
Mhm.
and I was like, okay, that's next month. Like that's I'm processing that in my head. Even then I was like, right, that's a month away. He's still got to be in prison for a month. They meant November next year. and I was just, my mind was
Mhm.
like, that my heart was shattered. I was like, what, how is this possible? Some of them will be in there. So everyone's, because they were arrested in groups.
Mhm.
Some people will have been in there for 2 years before they've even got to trial, which is just despicable, to be honest. The court system is, as well as the prison system, just in shambles. With regards to the jury question, we don't actually know yet, as it's an ongoing trial. Not sure yet.
Okay, yeah, I know people were arrested in kind of separate operations. That there's 18 in totality, but there's going to be three separate trials. But
Hmm.
did I mishear you? Is everyone, all 18, all remanded in prison?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Wow.
people,
Even as an accessory, even as someone who didn't take part in actual any, we'll call it criminal damage for the sake of a conversation here, people who are not even actually physically involved in it are
yeah,
remanded in custody. That is incredible.
and the CPS hasn't produced any evidence
Mhm.
that they have anything to do with it. These are literally people that have nothing to do with it.
Mhm.
They've just put these terrorism charges to
Yep,
them,
yep, yep, yep.
and because it's all so. The government, the UK government, were told by the UN, you need to change your terrorism laws. They're way too
Mhm.
broad. Um, and that was like in the early 2000s they were told that, but they've used it to incarcerate people who are going against the system, to incarcerate protesters right now, so that they don't have protesters exposing them, basically. And they're using the Terrorism Act so wrongly to do that. um, yeah, it's just an absolute abuse of the law. um, yeah, you've literally got people, innocent people, in prison for 2 years before they even see a trial because of that. And to be honest, like that is harming public safety by them just abusing
Mhm.
this. Like terrorism doesn't have the same gravity anymore because they've just been throwing it at people for protesting. So like them using it so so lightly on people like that, it's not going to have the same gravity, and that's a danger. That's a danger to public safety.
Yeah, there's different levels to it. I was nearly smiling when you said that they're using the law wrongly. The law is designed to be used specifically as broadly as possible so they can use it against anyone who stands up against an authoritarian kind of police state, which is more and more and more uh, where we're heading. I know we had an internment without trial here in the north of Ireland, and I know they have administrative detention in Israel, Palestine, where they don't produce evidence in court. They can lock people up for 6 months at a time, and then the moment they're released, they can lock them up for another 6 months. The moment they're released, they can lock them up for another 6 months without ever having any evidence brought before a court. And we talk about here in the north of Ireland, we talk about internment by remand, and that's what it sounds like. I mean, if there are people who are totally 100% innocent and there is no evidence and they're still locking them up because there is a tenuous connection to the larger kind of group, that is just that's using a bludgeon to hit a nail on the head. That's just the broadest possible repression because that's what it is. They're repressing people who are prepared to come forward and stand up to defend the rights of others. I want to say just two things quickly myself. If I find out when that date is, November, I'll come over.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yep, yep, yep. I'll stand outside the court along with everybody else. With a bit of luck, I might even get inside the court. It just depends how early you go and how many people are there.
So
And and
there's only allowed to be 18, so one person per
from each
prisoner.
family, yeah,
Uh,
yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah, it's
Well, let's hope there's 18,000 outside when it comes to the
absolutely,
public kind of. I wouldn't even call it. It wouldn't be a protest outside of the judicial system. It would be a support rally. That's the way to
yeah.
look at that. People supporting other people who are supporting other people trying to prevent a genocide. So we're going to wrap this up here. I'd like to thank you very much for your time and your candor. Anything you'd like to say in conclusion? We'll just give you free space to say anything you want to say about maybe how people can support the Filton 18, or should we all be demanding that civil rights are respected by the state and by the courts? What do you think?
So yeah, you can support the Filton 18 in multiple ways. They have a support fund. They have letter writing, which like even if you want to get your community together, do a letter writing workshop and write to the prisoners. I think it's
Mm.
very important that they receive messages. Although I will say that the prison does restrict how many of them get in. They really restrict even drawings from children. They've taken away from the prisoners, but it's important to write to them and hope that they get through anyway. We're keeping all of the letters anyway, so they will get them at the end. And sign our petition. We have a petition. We have an Instagram. Free the Filton 18 is the Instagram, and there's all in our link tree there. Um, and write to your MP, complain to your MP. So I assume your audience may be in the north of Ireland. Your MP can still do something about this. So definitely, we have a template again in that link tree about what you can say to your MP. Um, and we do regular call outs whenever things are happening in the prison, whenever someone's being withdrawn or isolated. We usually do a call into the prison to make sure that that person is then unisolated. Um, what else? The prisoners always say like they're always asking about Palestine. It's all about Palestine. Like as in it's not like the bigger picture is like we really need to keep talking about Palestine as well. Um, yeah.
Okay, look, that's fantastic. Just when we think came into my mind, just when you were talking there, I was just thinking about other people who've been incarcerated, other people who have been victims of a miscarriage of justice, other people who've been oppressed. And Julian Assange, that we mentioned earlier, came straight into my mind. And so did Leonard Peltier. Perhaps your campaign could contact them and just ask them to show support or potentially get involved in the campaign. People who have already been through this, they might have some value to add.
Yeah, absolutely. Like if anyone, even watching this, coming across this, has any support links and stuff, like anyone that they think could be of help, absolutely, like DM us, email us, put us in contact with them. We need all the help we can get. Like, it's a massive miscarriage of justice, and we just want to see our family free. So, yeah, please, if anyone has any ideas, anything's welcome.
So, just in conclusion, do you have a website or do you have an email that people can contact?
We do have an email, and it is. Let me just double check. I think it's Filton 10 at this was before before we became the Filton 18. We were when we originally set it up. It was the Filton 10. Let me just get it. It's Filton10 at outlook.com. So yeah, if you want to email over anything, we don't have a website. You can also get these support T-shirts. We sell them, and anything goes back into the fund, which will be divided by the divided between the 18 prisoners. Helps with like a lot of costs for visitations, helps with travel costs, helps with campaign costs, printing flyers, things like that. And then yeah, they obviously whenever they get out, they're gonna be without jobs and they're gonna have to set up their lives again. So yeah,
That's perfect. Okay. Well, on that note, I'm going to thank you for your time and efforts, and I hope to see you in November.
yes, sure. See you then.